folks. Trisha Curtis, CEO of Petronas and host of the Petronas podcast. Today is Thursday, January 9th, 2025, and I'm going to characterize the first 9 days of 2025 as a volatility and optimistic uncertainty. I am preparing to do a talk and presentation next week for the Denver Association of Petroleum Landmen here in Denver at the Denver Earth Resources Library. And as I'm putting all these slides together, and I was building doing a fresh market recap for the podcast that's going to drop this week, episode 123, I was going through a few big things. Obviously, today we had Jimmy Carter's funeral and the market was closed. But we also, we had ratcheting up in oil prices, and we've really seen a considerable ratchet up in oil prices. Oil prices are now at $74.19 for WTI. We're over $77 for Brent. We're looking at $3 and over $3.70, $3.76 for Henry Hub. And we're looking at the 10-year yield really pushing that 4.7% mark. So that means that we're seeing the 30-year mortgage well above 7% again. And so as I talk about the introduction in this podcast that's going to drop this week is a talk I gave at the Colorado School of Mines. It's a really great recap of not just a market recap, but it's a global geopolitics, geoeconomics talk that I gave at the Colorado School of Mines to petroleum engineering students. And so I wanted to lead in this year and start fresh with a strong market update. And part of the update, I want to talk about the Fed. So you're seeing a lot of market volatility, and why I'm characterizing part of this year as volatile is that we are seeing this rise up in oil prices, which I don't think is completely warranted with supply and demand. Part of that is being driven by the fact that we are seeing this cold snap across the U.S., especially on the East Coast, and we're driving up diesel prices for heating fuel, as well as nat gas prices. But the Fed, in addition to all this, is causing volatility because the Fed minutes came out yesterday, and they point to the fact that folks within the Fed are concerned about inflation under Trump administration. Now, I really talk a lot about this in the introduction of the podcast, because I think that we're not having a lot of honesty on what's really happened, why incumbents are being pushed out of office. Trudeau is leaving office. Biden, Harris did not make it back into office, and that is largely because of inflation and the inflationary policies under these administrations. My niece was just doing she was doing a few things on a look back for a school project, and she was looking at COVID, and she was looking at politics, and she was looking at inflation, and I was trying to explain to her part of the drivers of inflation, and I actually sent her charts from Fred data that show welfare spending and social spending and how much that went up under the Biden administration. Yes, it's come back down, but it has not come back down to those pre-COVID levels. And then also on what they called SNAP, or used to be called food stamps, how much the expenditure went up as well. And I've talked about this previously, but these are big things that led to big, when you add a bunch of money into the economy along with fiscal spending and entitlement programs and everything, you help enable inflation. And so what I didn't like and what I don't feel very honest right now about the market is that all this talk and concerns about a future, the incoming Trump administration and these potentially inflationary policies, which the Fed is already talking about and baking in and already causing market consternation. And yet when Janet Yellen was interviewed yesterday on CNBC, when asked if any of the fiscal policy or any of the political stuff was causing inflation under the Biden administration, she said maybe a tiny bit, but not really. It was supply side driven. And that is just not true. And we can see that actually in the spending data. So with that, folks, I want you to watch the market, watch it closely. Petronas has you covered. I think this year is going to gear up to be a year you need to watch China. You need to watch the geopolitics. We've heard Trump already talk about if the hostages from Hamas are not released, there will be hell to pay. This is a little fire under both the Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration and everyone involved to get a ceasefire deal done. So there's a lot going on in that space, but please listen to the latest Petronas podcast. It is episode 122 of the Petronas podcast. This is with Lane Weirs, the VP of Field Engineering with Liberty Energy, and Brent Cheeseman, the VP of North America for NCS Multistage. It's a fantastic conversation on frac in the service sector, and the one that's going to drop this week tomorrow is phenomenal, folks. I think you'll appreciate the market recap as well as all the nerdy stuff within the talk I gave to the students. So thank you so much for listening, folks. Bye.